Welcome back to the Good Vibes podcast. If you're new here and this conversation adds value, consider sharing it forward. It helps us keep building this village. Today's episode sits right at the intersection of two things we care deeply about: founder psychology and systems change. Seth Blaustein is the founder of Dollar Donation Club, a $1 a month micro-philanthropy model that's trying to solve humanity's biggest challenges by mobilizing collective action at scale. But what makes Seth's work unique isn't just the mission, it's the mechanism. He's building behavioral infrastructure for trust, traction, and long-term legitimacy. Not just asking people to donate, but designing a system that makes it automatic, transparent, and joyful. Let's dive in. Seth, let's start with packaging. You've worked with brands trying to get sustainability right, from materials like aluminum and compostables to full-blown system redesigns. What do you think material choices signal to consumers, and what's usually hidden beneath that surface?
Well, I with all of these types of questions, we like to zoom out in the way we think. We put our research lens on at Dollar Donation Club first, and think about it as an alien would, looking at planet Earth. So if you look at our species from space, you see that we are producing what we call waste. It's funny, if you look up the definition of waste or trash, it's basically any material that doesn't hold value. So if you find a value for it, it's no longer trash, it's no longer waste. But we're really the only species that has this concept of waste or trash, something that we have no idea or function of what else it can be used for, right? And so we produce lots of materials that we use for various things throughout human civilization, for medicine, for food containment, for transportation. We're using all these materials, but we're the only species that doesn't really have an idea or a way that comes back in a circular fashion into some other value for the ecosystem at large, right? So if you look at other species, their waste, their poop, would actually turn out to be some kind of fertilizer or food for something else. So we're the only species that really has sort of like a one-way exit of our materials that we call waste that actually injures other ecosystems, other species, rather than enhances. And so that's kind of a fundamental baseline understanding when you think about materials, right? What materials we're using, and is it possible that rather than thinking about them as something that would choke an ecosystem, is it possible that it would be something that would actually help an ecosystem, or at least be benign and not damage it? So, plastic's the big one, obviously. And, it was really a miracle when it was developed. It was actually sort of hailed by environmentalists as a savior for elephants, because back then you were using ivory billiard balls when playing pool. Billiards was super popular. You were using, animal tusks for billiard balls, and plastic was able to replace that. So it was one of the things that was lauded as like, look, we created this new in the lab, we created a new thing that, now we can save elephants, right? In very much the same way that we were using whale oil before. And when we moved to, fossil fuel oil, it was lauded as like, thank God we're saving the whales, right? From, being poached and hunted and declining whale populations. And now we can use this other thing that doesn't hurt anything. So, every generation and every breakthrough is somewhat better than the one before it. But also, at scale can introduce its own, apocalyptic scenarios. So anyways, with plastic, incredible material that was celebrated for how long it lasted back then, how durable it was. It's really made major breakthroughs in medicine and food storage. It has massive benefits that can't be understated. And at the same time, the success of it, right, being something that can live for 400 to 800 years before it really breaks down, is the problem with it, right? Because once it's outside of a waste management ecosystem and it's in a real ecosystem where there's whales and dolphins and turtles and other forms of life that are used to nibbling everything in their ecosystem, then you have a problem, because you're introducing a new chemical into the food chain. And, once the smallest species start eating it, then the species that's one step up from them in the food chain is eating them. The one that's a little bit bigger than them is eating them, and all the way up to sharks, and right. And so now you have, and then you have humans eating the seafood, and now we become what we eat, right? And so this is now the emerging science around the terrible amount of microplastics that are actually in our body and in our blood. I actually just came back from a treatment in Greece where I filtered microplastics out of my blood, and I could see the plastic after the treatment in a bag. It was really disturbing. But I'm really going like off the trail of what you set me up for here. But we do have a material problem, and I think again, looking at it as like humans have a material problem. Human civilization, as we evolve, has a paradigm of material problem that is both a solution to many other things that we've solved. So we should celebrate that we've found a solution to certain things, food storage, lives saved. There's guaranteed probably thousands and thousands, maybe millions of lives saved because of plastic, right? And at the same time, we've introduced a new health challenge and a new ecosystem destruction phenomenon through that. And so we need to figure out how to capture the waste that we create first. That's, I think, the first thing. A lot of people focus on the material, but I actually think it's the recovery of it is even more important than the material itself. And I can double click on that if you'd like. But yeah, we need to figure out how to be at least bio benign, and at best net positive to every other ecosystem and every other species on the planet, rather than something that is a pest to everything else except for ourselves.
Founders often confuse signal with substance, especially in the impact space. What are some of the common ways that brands, try to look conscious, but actually create mistrust or stagnation?
Yeah, with plastic, it's really common, especially in the textile industry, where you'll see clothing, right, that is boasting about being, this T-shirt was made from recycled plastic, right, like 14 bottles of recycled plastic. When in fact, that might be a net negative. The fact that they've recycled that plastic and put it into a T-shirt. T-shirts, textiles they're the bottom end of the plastic life cycle. So when you can't figure out anything else to do with the plastic, you downgrade it into polyester or other synthetic textiles. And typically you can't upcycle that back up into something like a bottle. I say that typically because we've given grant money to an innovation coming out of MIT that has figured out, or at least is working on figuring out how to do that, which would be a major breakthrough. But the point is that it's a downgrade. And the reason it's a problem is because one of the biggest sources of microplastics in our world is coming from textiles. It's coming from clothes. So when you take a polyester T-shirt or a pair of pants or underwear, whatever, and you put it in your washing machine, there's little fibers that make up the textile that are polyester. They're plastic. They are microplastic, right? Are spinning off of that shirt into your washing machine and going into the drain, because the filters on most washing machines are not capable of catching that microplastic. And so that's going in the water supply. It sometimes is so light that it can be evaporated into clouds and then rains, and you're actually breathing it in. A lot of people don't know that one of the biggest sources of microplastics that humans ingest comes from airborne microplastics. So it's not, even if you're avoiding all the plastic bottles and everything, right, all the ways you could touch plastic, you're still going to get exposure to it from the air due to the choices that other people are making about clothes and about their washing machines. And so that's one example where a lot of brands, for a chapter, and I still see it, are really bragging about things like, oh, we took these plastic bottles and we turned it into a T-shirt or a pair of socks, when in fact, you're actually creating a higher uptake rate of microplastics into the ecosystem just by doing that. So it's actually the signal doesn't meet the substance even a little bit in a case like that.
So in that light, what should founders be thinking about instead if their goal is actually impact?
The truth is that it's actually always more complex than what you initially think, right? And so this is sort of one of the fundamental problems and challenges of philanthropy, is that we tend to give to things that strike our heart and that are really, have a good story and that touch us from a storytelling lens. In fact, that's what drives philanthropic donations is storytelling. So the projects that do better at storytelling and, they earn more donations and they earn more grants, right? The projects that might be better at actually solving a problem, but aren't good at storytelling, are going to get less funding. And so this is a really big disparity challenge in the philanthropic space. So the first thing I would say to founders is like, whatever you think, is the kind of Google it and find a solution, is probably not it. You're probably finding whoever is owning the positioning of the story. Right. And so you actually do need, some expert advice in order, to do people who've done the hundreds of hours of research into the complexity of whatever problem set you're looking at to really actually understand, hey, this sounds like a great deal, right? We're going to take these plastic bottles that would have ended up, in a landfill and we're going to turn them into t-shirts. Like, awesome, right? It just sounds like a 10 out of 10, like marketing 10, environment 10, right? And like, as I just explained, you're actually creating more microplastic, right? That is now, it might have been better to have those bottles in a landfill where they're at least in one place compacted, right? And away from an ecosystem, right? But now you're creating this mass proliferation and we don't really have great solutions for remediating microplastics. And so, actually trying to, either look into the nuance and the complexity yourself, which is usually not super feasible, or work with someone like Dollar Donation Club. This is not an advertisement, but this is why we do what we do with businesses, is to help them actually understand the problem set. There's always ways to have incredible marketing stories while actually solving a problem and doing it in an effective way. It's just, we have investment brokers, right? We would, to help us with investment. We have experts for many things, but for some reason we don't think about philanthropic brokers, right? And it's actually incredibly important because you can do harm by trying to do good. And beyond that, it's just a very difficult space to know who to trust, know who actually generates the results. Is this actually the thing that, you thought would be where you should be moving the needle? Is that actually where you should move the needle? There's a lot of questions and complexity that go into this to making a truly effective impact decision as a founder.
How do you think about story as infrastructure in general?
So I actually think literally everything in our world is story infrastructure, right? So the stories that we tell as a species become the infrastructure of the world. They become the government, they become the money system, they become the medical system, they become waste management infrastructure, right? So the way we actually are, like, and to get not to go into like too woo woo, like the way that our consciousness is structured reflects as the infrastructure that we actually have in the world. And so this is why I became a filmmaker at a young age, because I was both interested in spirituality and creativity. And I realized, like, holy crap, storytelling is the most powerful technology in the world, because everything you see, this microphone, this computer, this phone, this table, right? Everything that is non-organic material around me was constructed in the mind, right? So the structure of the mind is what constructed it. And so if we actually want to radically shift for the better the infrastructure of the world, then we have to learn how to radically shift our internal state of being.
How did Dollar Donation Club emerge? Why did you choose $1 a month as the atomic unit?
I'm a filmmaker, storyteller by background. I ran a creative agency for about 7 years that helped raise around $20 million for different philanthropic causes through storytelling videos on Facebook, Instagram, so short form content. And what I saw was, for example, we had one campaign where a video got about 28 million views, raised about $1 million. And I noticed how many people in the comments were complaining that they needed a billionaire like Elon Musk or Jeff Bezos in order to like, how do we get someone with billions of dollars to really help with this? There was this feeling of like, I can't really make a difference with my $10 donation that I made. But how do we together find someone who can save the day, a government, a billionaire, et cetera. And as I'm looking at the data on the back end, I'm thinking, man, there's 28 million people here saying they're small and not powerful. That doesn't really make sense. Like I saw a school of fish. And that school of fish was not self-aware, right? So if every minnow in a school of fish is afraid when a whale comes up to it, then it's going to scatter. And it's no longer a school of fish, and it's lost its power of being a pattern that is bigger than each individual. And so that just struck me. And I thought, why haven't we created, a school of fish super philanthropist? Why not? What if all 28 million people gave $1 a month? Like, you'd put no financial burden on any one person, but you would create this $28 million a month donation that would make a massive difference. I mean, a lot of billionaires don't even donate that much, right? And so it just was like, how have we not tried this? Surely it's difficult, but how have we not really attempted to create, a unified network that does tiny, tiny actions, but with opt-in on a big scale. So there's no load on one point in the network, but there's this massive expression it can make. And so anyways, that's a very nerdy way of it, but it was like this idea of a school of fish becoming self-aware for creating good in the world. Right. So that was part one. The second part, I was kind of cooking up the idea for Dollar Donation Club. And just to maybe do an interlude, Dollar Donation Club is a collective micro donation platform with 23,000 members. Our vision is to create the world's first collective billionaire super philanthropist. So $1 billion a month going to impact projects coming from millions of everyday people around the world, giving as little as $1 a month. That's our vision. So quick interlude for those who are maybe a little confused. I had been brewing up this idea for collective giving, but what really happened was I was producing a nonprofits conference back in 2019. During the event, one of the speakers' laptops accidentally got run over by a car. As she was rushing from her Uber into the green room to get ready for her talk, she was like really late, so she left her backpack in front of the venue. It rolled off the curb. Someone was parking. It got run over by a car. Right. So now she's on stage. She has 4.5 minutes left on her short talk. I'm handed by a volunteer her laptop, which is mangled and destroyed. And and they're like, yeah, this accident happened out front. You're going to have to break the news to her when she comes off stage in 4 minutes. So I'm thinking, okay, how am I going to break the news to her? This is a bummer. But at the time, I'd really been baking my mind in micro-philanthropy and, bottom-up solutions, and many hands make light work. So I said, let's try something. So when she finished her talk, we jumped up on stage with the MC and we said, hey, can we get everyone's attention for a second? This is Betty's laptop. It just got run over by a car. Right. So everyone went silent. We said, we all know what this would feel like if it was your laptop I was holding. Empathy. And then we said, hey, there's hundreds of us in the room right now. If everyone gave $1, we could buy her a new laptop without putting any burden on any one person. Wouldn't that be cool? So 2 QR codes popped up. We had the 3.5 minutes after we realized this to make these 2 QR codes, one for Venmo, one for PayPal. We said, don't give more than $1. Just give $1. Let's make some magic happen for Betty. Right. And so everyone pulls their phones out, and within 30 minutes, we raised over $1,200. And it was a real example of how a school of fish can, spontaneously unite to create a very outsized impact for the scale of that event. And the scale of a few hundred people, without putting any financial burden on any one person. And so that was when it sunk in my bones, and I realized this is what I'm going to dedicate my life to, is building the version of that for the globe, right? So if you can prove that on a small scale to solve her broken laptop, why can't you do it on a global scale to solve the broken laptops of the world, right? So ocean pollution, hunger, poverty, different types of disease that are curable, reforesting the planet. There's many of these large scale humanitarian and environmental challenges that everybody wants to solve. They're not political. They're not ideological. Everybody has an interest in solving them. And yet we do not have a really good way of doing it. We don't have the vetting and the measurement. We don't have a priority list. And we have basically relied on scattered small donations and mostly on major billionaire donations, which are always leading their own interest and not necessarily the broader public's. And so Dollar Donation Club is a vision of creating the world's first collective super philanthropist, a collective billionaire super philanthropist that is truly human powered, is truly collective powered, and truly serves the benefit of all beings and not just one person's, next business model agenda, which tends to be the case with billionaire philanthropy. So that's sort of the idea. And so you can see how the narrative and the hero's journey of joining Dollar Donation Club, you're becoming part of the world's first collective super philanthropist. You're becoming part of a school of fish that is here for good, right? You're becoming part of that, recognizing that, hey, my dollar might not, on its own, if I go about my own thing, it might not make that big of a difference. But hey, if I do it here together with thousands of other people, potentially millions of other people, it truly can move the needle. It really could make a big difference. And so that is the narrative. That is our brand story, right? And so we're actually inviting people into a new way of expressing consciousness, their own behavior, and becoming part of something meaningful. And so that is both our brand story, and that is the infrastructure that we're inviting the customer into.
And given this sort of coalescence around this super philanthropist model, if you were to speak then, if you could embed one idea into every founder that's attempting to provide solutions in this impact space, what's the one principle you think actually scales trust in this audience?
Trust is suboptimal to giving proof. When you trust, you have to let go of something, and you have to hope and pray that the right thing happens, right? And we're very accustomed to this in the philanthropic space. But what we're trying to prove with Dollar Donation Club is what's better than trust is what we call proof of impact. When I donate $1, 2.2 pounds of ocean plastic are promised to be removed, right? Does it actually happen? So we do the hard work to vet and approve that. So if you're a founder and you're thinking about how do I build trust, how do you close the gap of what needs to be trusted, right? Because like, for example, when you donate, you give, and then there's a gap of when am I going to hear back, right? Maybe I'll see an annual report 6 months from now, and I'll piece together somehow inside of myself, like, oh, I had some small part to play in that, right? But you don't really know. You don't really know where the money went. You don't really know if they used it for what they said they were going to use it for. You don't really know if it made the impact. So trust, it's like Henry Ford's idea of, if I gave people what they wanted, I would give them a faster horse, right? Because people would ask for a faster horse. That's what I believe is the case in philanthropy in particular, is people would say, I want more trustworthy charities, right? There's none of them that you can trust. I want more trustworthy ones, right? But what's better than trust is, what if I said, okay, I'll give you these 5 trustworthy ones, or I'll prove to you exactly what your dollar did and it'll be measurable, and I'll show you the result. Like, who would take the trust, right? No one would take the trust. Trust is cheap. Trust is low grade verification, right? It's actually not verification, right? It's just a low grade promise. And trust is good in relationships. Trust is good in partnerships and marriages. But when it comes to serving a product and serving a customer, give them proof, right? How do you remove that chasm that they have to jump over and in belief to trust you? And how do you just show them the proof? It's like, what are ways you could prototype demonstrating proof? Right. And a simple example, like, we have a donation tracker that shows you like your donation's on its way. Right. And it's, they're preparing the seeds for the tree. Right. It's sort of modeled after like a FedEx tracker. So when you type in your FedEx, shipping, whatever code, tracking number, that's what I'm looking for. You see, oh, my package is in Ohio on its way to Austin, Texas. Right. Like, who cares that it's in Ohio? I don't care. But it puts my mind at ease, right? I don't need to trust anymore that it's on the way. I can actually see that it was scanned into this facility, right? And so, yes, I have to trust what I see on the screen, but the difference is so much bigger, right? And so, as far as collapsing the unknown and proving, like, it was logged in here, and now guess what? It's on a truck over there. It's like, it just puts my mind at ease, and I have a lot less need to trust FedEx that somehow it's going to end up here. I can just check in. My mind is at ease, and I'll take that verification any day over like just trust. Right. And so that's a really simple example, a crude example, but you can take you might be underestimating. There's small data that you could be sharing with a customer that seems insignificant and it's just sitting on your laptop. You're already doing it, but sharing it with them actually puts their mind at ease that this is actually happening, that the result is actually working.
That is a wrap today. Folks, what Seth is building isn't just obviously a funding model. It's a behavioral operating system, a structure for proof of impact, participation, and real momentum built on simplicity and obviously not spectacle. If you got something from today's episode, please do hit follow, drop a comment, or send it to someone who's walking a similar path. Till next time, stay strong, stay sharp, stay aligned, and keep up the good vibes.